will see created a slightly different from what they are. We talk, we see things are not normal.
Welcome to Strange Familiars. Allison,
Yes.
how are you?
Awake.
Awake? Well, that's half the battle.
It's more than half the battle.
On tonight's show, I will be talking to not one,
I heard this 2 guests at once.
but 2 guests. I like doing these interviews because they kind of corroborate each other's stories and give different views and so forth. I really like doing that. I'll be talking with Hazel and Michelle. They have stories that most of them are based around the neighborhood they grew up in.
Are they sisters or just friends?
Just friends.
Okay.
A lot of strange stuff was happening in this neighborhood. We've got stories about a black witch, really creepy, weird voice from an answering machine, the Cowman, which I kind of wanted to be a Bigfoot, but it sounds like something else. So we'll get to Hazel and Michelle in a moment. First, I want to thank our patrons. Thank you, patrons. Thank you for your support. We could not make Strange Familiars without you. That's not just something we say. It's absolutely true. Your support allows us to make this podcast. If you like what we do and you'd like to support Strange Familiars and get extra content besides, you can become a patron at Patreon. It's patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All of our patrons get commercial-free episodes of the weekly shows, plus 2 full exclusive episodes of Strange Familiars every month just for our patrons. You can check it out. Go to patreon.com/strangefamiliars. All right, let's go ahead and get to Hazel and Michelle. I'd like to welcome Hazel and Michelle to Strange Familiars. How are you doing tonight?
Great.
Fantastic. Thanks for having us. This is so exciting.
Oh, thanks for taking the time to do this. So, Michelle contacted me first. She said she had these stories that kind of around this one neighborhood and house. I guess it's the house you grew up in, right?
Yeah, the majority of my childhood. Mm-hmm.
But, Hazel, you lived in this house first.
Yes. For a short period of time, but yes.
So, you have some stories as well regarding this house. All right, so it's a house and it's a neighborhood, yes? That's weird things are happening in this area. So.
Yeah, I would say the whole neighborhood.
Okay, that's very interesting. So these are some of my favorite interviews. It's when we get 2 people with 2 perspectives, and we don't often get to do it, so I'm excited about this. So this was in or near Cincinnati?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just a suburb somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like outside of the city, so very suburbia.
Okay.
Yeah.
What year are we talking about, roughly, these stories?
Oh, I think it spans from the early 90s all the way until maybe the early 2000s.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Fairly recent.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we're starting with you, Hazel.
All right. Well, maybe I should give some context for why I even started talking about it with Michelle, and that was because my boyfriend actually introduced me to this show, and he loves you very much.
Oh,
and
cool.
So he got me listening to it, and one night I was at my old job. I worked at a bakery overnight, and I was listening to an episode where a person was describing seeing a black witch in the window. And I remember having this primal reaction, like I stopped everything I was doing. My forehead kind of did that thing where it slicks back and you're just like, oh, because I had that experience. And at the time, I was kind of talked out of it and thought, like, I guess that wasn't a thing that happened. But then hearing someone else have that experience too, just sort of made all these other things come out. I know a lot of people say that on your show, but when you hear other people went through the same thing you did, you give yourself permission to think about those things and remember those things and
This is very common for the show, and it's one of, I'm not happy people are scared. I'm not happy people are upset by these things, but I am happy that people are sharing these things, and it makes it okay for other people to say, oh yeah, me too. That aspect I very much like. So sorry to interrupt you.
Oh,
proceed.
Okay, so I guess I'll start by giving more context to why I was in that neighborhood. So my mom was a single mom for a lot of my life, and we moved around. And at one point, I lived in my grandparents' house, which is just a door away from Michelle's old house. So we lived there, and my grandma was a pretty magical kind of person. She's a very proud Norwegian woman. I grew up believing in gnomes and elves. And
cool.
The tree in front of her house, like, she would tell me there were elves in there, and I would talk to them. Like, I thought I was talking to elves in the trees. So, grew up with magical thought, but also kind of a religious household. So there was that aspect as well. So then my mom got married, and we moved to a borough close to our neighborhood, but not in the same area. And that's where I saw the Black Witch. I was 3 years old, and we were living in that apartment. I'll just say traumatic things happened there. I don't want to go into detail with any of that kind of stuff. I'll say when trauma happened.
Understood.
But I remember they started to go through a divorce, and I was in my room, and my mom was the only one home. And I kind of had one of those beds that was like a futon, that's kind of like the Japanese kind that lays on the ground. And I always liked to have it propped up in the back. So I kind of slept at an incline. And I was looking kind of out towards the window. And I just remembered seeing the shape of a witch in the window. And it was blacker than black. It wasn't like a shadow. It was didn't have any color. It was absorbing light.
Mm-hmm.
It was so crazy. And I remember screaming for my mom and telling her, and she was just I think it's just clothes. And I'm it's not clothes.
Yeah, clothes in the window.
Yeah, I was no, it was a witch. And she was I don't see anything. I don't think there's anything there. I don't think she was intentionally being dismissive or anything. I just think that she looked and there was nothing there when she looked. But
yeah. Well, I mean, it's parents' job to calm kids down. So when you say it had the shape of a witch, are we talking pointy hat, pointy nose? What gave it away?
Yeah, it wasn't pointy hat. It was slouchy hat. But I knew it was a witch. And the hair, I could see the outline of the hair, and it was scraggly and wiry, and the nose, and the hunched over.
The blacker than black thing is we hear that a lot on the show. Very interesting detail, and one that you wouldn't have known as a 3-year-old, and in fact I didn't know this blacker than black thing probably until I started doing Strange Familiars.
Yeah, I had never talked about it before with anyone until I heard that, because I filed it away. I didn't think about it after that happened. My mom said it wasn't there, so I guess it wasn't there. And then
yeah, I've known Hazel for almost 30 years, and I just found out about that witch in the window story last year when we're talking about more stuff. So it's very interesting. It gets more interesting.
Yeah. So then they got divorced, my mom and her husband at the time, and we moved back to my grandparents' house. But then we moved into Michelle's house, and we lived there for 6 months or so. I was around 4 then. So my mom would have been staying, we were living there with someone who owned the house. And my mom would have been staying in Michelle's room, and I stayed in the middle room. And I don't know, Michelle, if you want to go ahead and...
The middle room upstairs was my sister's bedroom. And should I just tell him?
I guess, I mean, I think
Okay.
that's,
Okay. So I found out, like, within the last 5 years or so, that my sister also saw a witch in the window in the same bedroom that Hazel slept in when she lived. Well, Hazel didn't see the witch in the window when she lived in this house, but it's the same bedroom Hazel slept in.
almost
Yeah.
directly after we lived in the
Yes.
other place.
Yeah.
Oh, that actually just gave me chills.
Yeah.
So did your sister describe it?
No. It's kind of difficult to explain. I actually didn't hear it directly from my sister. There's a lot of context that's really hard to explain, but my sister was hospitalized for mental health reasons. And when she was hospitalized, I was asking one of her friends questions. I don't really know how much I want to share, and I know that's a little bit difficult for listeners because it's kind of hard to put all the context together, but I just don't really want to share a lot for my
No, that's
sister's
fine.
privacy. But it was
Sure.
when I was visiting her in the hospital, one of her friends was visiting, and I was questioning this guy. Like, I just wanted to find out more information from him about his experiences with my sister because I didn't really know him very well. And I asked him, has my sister ever told you that she has seen things before? And he told me that she told him that she saw a witch in the window as a little girl.
Wow.
Yeah. And my sister has told me directly that she has seen things such as, like, she said that she can see people's burdens. Like, she can see things that are attached to them.
Okay.
So she has told me that, like, directly.
So if this is an uncomfortable question, we can just edit it out. But a certain number of listeners will say, well, mental health issues, blah, blah, blah. You know your sister,
Yeah.
and by your estimation, is this something external she saw? So you can make the call better than the listener is what I'm saying, because you know your sister.
I believe that she saw it because I believe in the ability to see things,
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are some people that can see things that other people can't see. I believe that 100%.
Sure.
I am a Christian, and so I personally believe that there are gifts that people have and that they can build upon and grow in. And so I would say, from my perspective, my sister has the gift of sight. Like, she can see things sometimes when, she's led to do so. And I think that's a really difficult gift to have. I don't have that gift, but I have had conversations with other people in life who have seen things as well. So I just know that it's something that happens. And
Sure. Yeah.
those people weren't mentally, they didn't have any mental health issues.
Right.
Also, I knew the bedroom really well. I knew the window really well. I've thrown stuff out of that window. So, like, I know what's outside, and it was a second story window. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
There was no light source between our house and the neighbor's house,
Yeah. And I mean, it's just what gave me chills is the fact that she said she saw it right after Hazel would have left. And it's almost like it was there looking for Hazel.
Oh!
That, you have no idea, like, the guilt I feel, like, it's my fault it's there. Like,
Aw.
and for what it's worth, I believe her. I believe her that
Yeah.
she sees things. Like, knowing her as a person, I don't think that's something that she would say unless it was true.
Yeah. It's just something we have to address. And Michelle, as you say, some people are gifted. I often say, you can hear me say it every 2 shows probably. I believe it's true in the same way that people are gifted with art or music or something else. Some people just have a propensity for these abilities. I don't think it gives them superpowers or anything. It's just like somebody who's good at art or something else.
I 100%
and I think,
agree. Yeah.
I think other people can probably develop them, but it just comes easier for some people. And I always say, like, for me, art comes easy. Music is a struggle. I have to practice. So
yeah,
I think it's probably along those lines.
Yeah.
All right. So sorry about the difficult questions, but
no, it's good.
I know we should address that. Was there more, Hazel, when you lived at this house?
At that house, for me, no. Some other things just like that I question now growing up in my grandparents' house, like constantly seeing things out of the corner of my eye, or, hearing someone say my name all the time, just all the time. And my grandma would be like, it's the gnomes. But, you think about that stuff, and I wish I had kept better track, but I just didn't. I didn't keep good track of that. Yeah. I did have other things at other points in my life, but and in the same neighborhood, but not on the same street.
Okay. So we're shifting to Michelle. Your family is now in this house. Your sister sees the witch. What else is going on here?
Okay. When I was preparing for this show, I was trying to think of where to start, and my mind always started with, well, how did I even get into this stuff in the first place? Because I grew up in a very Christian home. We didn't watch anything scary. I wasn't allowed to watch PG-13 till I was 13, not allowed to say anything, bad, like very strict home. And we didn't talk about ghosts or paranormal stuff or anything. It was not something my parents were interested in. It just never came up in conversation. So when I'm trying to think, like, when did I start getting curious about this stuff? It must have been after my first strange experience in that house. And it happened very shortly after we moved in. I think I was around 7 years old when we moved in. And I just remember waking up in the middle of the night one night, didn't have to use the bathroom. I didn't have a bad dream. I wasn't uncomfortable. I just woke up in the middle of the night and I could hear a man's voice downstairs. And for some reason, I could not resist going to look, even though in my mind, I was like, this could be a burglar. He could be a burglar. I was really scared. Like, I was sweating. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. Like, I was holding my breath to listen, so your heartbeat is just like deafening. And it felt like an eternity. I just creeped really slowly down that hallway and then down the stairs. And I peeked into the kitchen and there was no one there, but I heard a man's voice and it was coming from the answering machine. And this was back in the day when the answering machines were cassette tapes that you rewound and recorded over.
Oh, yeah. I remember.
And I didn't understand what it was saying. It was not English. I don't know what voice or what language it was speaking. And I was describing this to Hazel as we were going over our stories. It was like, how you hear a language, and even though you don't speak that language, you have an idea of what part of the world it comes from, at least. Like, you just know. And I could not recognize this language. It sounded like gobbledygook language. And then at some point it said my mother's first name. And that scared me. And the message was repeating. It was like, It was like gobbledygook, gobbledygook, my mom's name, gobbledygook, gobbledygook, stop. And I was like, expecting the tape to like rewind and replay, but it didn't. It just kept repeating the message. And then I thought, well, I'm going to unplug this thing because I want to see if it's going to keep going. So I unplug it. So I unplugged it and it stopped. Did not keep going. So in the next morning, I asked my parents at the breakfast table if they had checked the messages yet. And they said there weren't any Messages. And that was it. There was no more to that conversation.
That's creepy. So how long do you think it was? So you heard it from your bedroom, and you went down. How long total do you think it repeated this, the phrase, whatever it was?
It was not long. I mean, I don't know how long it had been going on before I woke up, but between the time I woke up and unplugged it, it was just a matter of like a minute or two, very short.
Wow, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna throw a wrench in the works. You think it was speaking Norwegian?
I would say no. I've listened to enough Norwegian, but that was almost 30 years ago. I have no idea.
I let it Nissa loose.
7-year-old.
Loose little Nissa running around in your home.
Yeah, I don't know, but I will say, like Hazel has said, Hazel introduced me to the show and I started listening, and I've listened to every episode. And similar to her reaction with the Black Witch in the window, I have heard some other people say things from time to time, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I've experienced something similar. And there was an episode where somebody was talking about magical whispering and how it sounds like a language you don't recognize. And that made me think of my answering machine story.
Yeah. Was it like guttural sounding, or was it just more?
It wasn't guttural. It just sounded like it's too far away of a memory for me to be too descriptive now. Yeah.
Some of the unknown language with poltergeist accounts will describe it as like guttural, kind of sounding. I was just curious.
Well, it's funny you should say poltergeist, because like most of the other stuff that happened in that house, I described as poltergeist when I lived there. Like when I was living there, I was like, this is poltergeist stuff. But I've heard a lot of people say that poltergeist activity is actually generated by the person, like living there.
That's one theory.
One theory. So for a while, I thought it was just me, but I didn't experience anything paranormal after living in that house, really. So, not
interesting. That's very interesting.
Not in these such concrete ways. Like I've had more spiritual, supernatural experiences, like more related to faith stuff that's happened as throughout my life, but not like paranormal things. So the first experience I had in the house was the answering machine, and I am guessing that's when I started to get curious and had questions. And I remember the first time I learned how to look up a book in the library, I wanted to find books about ghosts because I wanted to find answers. So I guess the second thing chronologically that happened was I heard a residual noise while I was home alone. So I was home alone and we lived in a bi-level. This home was bi-level. So the living, like the family room area where the TV was below my bedroom. And you know how you know every sound in your house? You just know what every sound is. I was alone. My mom was gone. Like she had taken my sister away to a dance lesson. It was just me watching TV. I heard my mother like walking upstairs down the hall to my bedroom. Like she was setting laundry down on my bed and then like walked out of the room, but then I didn't hear the steps continue down the hallway. But my mom's alive and well. You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't make sense. It wouldn't be her ghost. So I don't know why I heard those residual steps, but that was really strange and it freaked me out. So I called Hazel and I's mutual childhood friend who lived on the other side of me. I called her and I was like, get over here. I was like, I'm so scared. Like, I just heard footsteps and I'm home alone. Like, come be with me. So she came over and we were sitting on the steps that led to upstairs. And I described to her what I just told you. And I said, I think it was a poltergeist. And the second I said that, a crash happened upstairs behind us.
Oh, wow.
And we grabbed each other and we were just screaming. And again, it was a sound I recognized, though. It sounded exactly like our plastic toothbrush holder falling into our sink and clattering, which was very loud. And again, no one's home except me and now my friend. Doesn't make sense that that would just get knocked down without one of us accidentally knocking it down, which again happened all the time. And that's how I knew what that sounded like. So being the 90s kids we were, we grabbed the metal vacuum cleaner attachments and we were like hunting around the house trying to find the source of this noise. Of course, the bathroom being the first place we checked, and nothing was disturbed. We checked.
I'm not surprised. I was going to guess that the toothbrush holder was in place.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There was nothing. We even went all the way down to the basement where we knew the sound didn't come from. We were looking. Nothing was disturbed. So that freaked her out pretty well. And then I can't remember if this next thing happened before or after my creature encounter, but there was one time where I was sitting in the living room of that house, which was on the ground floor, like in the front of the home. The picture window looked out into the front yard. I was sitting in the chair and I was, again, my sister and I were home alone this time. I wasn't alone by myself. My sister was there with me, but my mother wasn't home. I was angry. This was a really difficult time for our family because I think at this point my parents had already been divorced and so my mom was gone a lot more, being a single mom and doing what she had to do. So I made my sister and I dinner and I was angry and I was just sitting in this chair, just kind of brooding, looking out the front window and just kind of spacing out. And I heard a man's voice in my right ear say my name. And it was right in my ear. I'm talking I felt the air from the lips brush my ear. And it was like he was calling me back to reality. Like he was, Michelle, in my ear. And I said to my sister, did you say my name? Knowing it wasn't her, because it was clearly a man's voice. And she sounded scared. She was like, no, I didn't. And I was like, okay, and I just moved on with my life. Those were the little things that happened. The creature stories next chronologically.
Well, I'm excited for that.
Yeah. So this neighborhood has a creek running through it, and it runs through the general area of town. And we played in that creek every day. I mean, we were always in there, almost every day. Whenever it was raining, snowing, whatever, we played in that creek every day. We built a club in the woods. We gave names to all the different sections and claimed it as ours. We had so many great adventures in the creek and in the woods. And my next door neighbor, who is Hazel and I's mutual friend, we all grew up together. She and I were down in the creek, and in the creek there was a sewer pipe that extended across the creek, connecting, I guess, the sewer lines from one section of the neighborhood to the other. So it was just this big pipe that extended all the way across. And in the middle was a really large concrete circle. I guess it was kind of acting as like a pillar to anchor it in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And we always crossed the creek there. You know, we had our little path that we always took to get from one place to the other. And we were just standing on this circular concrete pad in the middle of the creek talking. I think we're about 13 years old, maybe, at this point. It was a little bit before dinner time, but it was still really bright and sunny out. Warm weather, you know, standing in direct sunlight. And we're just talking, gabbing away, being teen girls. And I saw out of the corner of my eye this little black and white cat, like, just come out of it was kind of like a cleared out section of the woods. Like there weren't really any trees growing there. It was kind of like a tall, grassy spot that we had named like the fairy area. We were like, this is where the fairies live.
Interesting.
Yes, very interesting. And it was a little black and white cat, came out into the creek, and it walked behind a patch of grass in the middle of the creek. And I was like, you know, oh, look, a kitty. And then this black humanoid figure stood up from behind the grass. It just like, boop, popped right up, just like this black shadow man staring right at us, like straight on. And again, this is another one of those darker than night, like blacker than the night sky. Like it was this black figure that had no features. There were no facial features, no hair, no like genitalia, like no breasts, like no curvature to the figure at all. It was just like this straight, very straight, black and white looking figure that had arms, you know, and legs. And it was looking at us. Like in that moment, it felt like a threat. Like we were terrified, right? Like we were too scared to even scream. We were just paralyzed. We were frozen, staring at this thing.
How many of you were there?
It was just me and one friend.
Okay, but you both saw it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we turned to look at each other and our mouths were just hanging all the way open and our eyes like as wide as saucers. And then we screamed and she took off. She was gone. Like she took off running back to her house. But I turned to look back and this thing had turned to like keep walking across the creek and go on its way. But it got down on all fours and was walking on all fours, which if you see a grown man do that, it looks odd because their butt is up higher than their head. Mm-hmm. And it was just walking and it kind of walked up the bank and it disappeared into the brush. I couldn't see it anymore, but I could hear it. Like I could hear it rustling, and for a brief moment, I saw a patch of brown fur, like before it disappeared behind a tree.
Oh, wow.
And then I screamed and ran home.
Wow. How old were you, roughly? You said teenage.
Around
early teenage?
Yeah, I would say around 12 or 13.
And how did the size of this thing compare to like an adult human?
It looked like an adult human. Like maybe a 6-foot male.
Mm-hmm. And did it have a normal proportions?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
It kind of felt like when it stood up to look at us, and then obviously it was very scary because we didn't know what it was, and it was just like you don't know what you're looking at, and you don't know what it's going to do. It kind of felt like it was assessing if it was in danger. Like it was kind of like, you know, like I'm looking at you to see if you're a threat, and I'm gonna attack you if you are. And then it decided we weren't and kept going.
Wow. So you didn't see any eyes or anything like that, just solid black.
Yeah. And like I said, it was sunny out, so there was no shadow play. There was no depth to it. Like you couldn't discern anything on the figure itself. Like it was just black.
Now, in your email, you called him the Cowman. Why did he get that name?
Because of the cat being black and white, like a dairy cow, like a black and white cow.
Okay, so even then you associated him with this cat.
Yes, because the cat came across the creek and disappeared behind this patch of grass, and then the black figure stood up from behind the same patch of grass, and we never saw the cat.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We never saw the cat again. And then after it got down on all fours and went up into the brush, I couldn't see it for the most part, but I did see like a brown furry piece of it before it disappeared behind the tree, and I couldn't see it anymore. And I assumed it was the brown rear end of like a white-tailed deer, because it looked like I was looking at the top of the back of something. Mm-hmm. It was not walking bipedally or anything. It was like the brown back of a deer was what it looked like that I saw a piece of.
And when you look back and saw it on all fours, it looked like a human trying to walk on all fours.
Yes, so. It was really creepy.
That is creepy. That is so creepy. Just an interesting note. You asked the friend that was with you to come on as well, and she said she didn't want to talk about it because she's worried she'd see it again if she talked about it.
Yes. We have talked about it in the past, like whenever our gang of friends gets together, because we all still know each other. We've like been in each other's weddings and stuff, and we still stay in touch. And there's been times where we've been sitting around the fire and we've talked about it. And the last time we talked about it, she said that she saw a black and white dog, not a black and white cat.
Oh, that is fantastically interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Wow.
And that makes perfect sense because her family's a dog family and my family's a cat family.
Wow. That is so interesting.
Yeah. And she told me that she thinks it's a Wendigo, which I completely disagree with, but that's what she thinks. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the reason why she thinks talking about it will bring it back. But I don't think it's a Wendigo based on what I've read about Wendigos.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't diagnose exactly what it was, but it seems some kind of shape-shifting thing.
Yeah, I've been calling it more of a shapeshifter now since it has nothing to do with a cow. But as a child, we called it the Cowman. And like when we ran home and told our sisters and our moms, and we told everybody in the house, we just called it the Cowman. And we were always just like, are we going to see it again? And there was definitely kind of like a heightened sense of paying attention to things between all of the kids now.
Did you go back and play in that area of the woods?
Oh, yeah. We still went back there all the time. Yeah.
Never saw it again,
no,
I guess.
No.
Wow.
That weekend after, when I came and they told me what happened, I was so jealous that I wasn't there and I didn't get to see it.
It was really scary. The only other weird thing that happened in that house that I can recall, just to wrap up my experiences in that house, were we went out of town and we asked the family of my friend who saw the Cowman with me, we asked them to keep an eye on our house while we were out of town. And my mom had left like specific lights on, like this lamp in the living room's on and my bedroom light's going to stay on. And she told the neighbor that, like, here are the lights I left on. And blah, blah. Well, when we came home from being out of town, we were greeted in our driveway. Like they saw us pull into the driveway and they came out. Like the family came out and told us they had seen like a man walking around in our house while we were gone. And they thought it was a burglar. So they like alerted their stepdad, and he like got a baseball bat and went over there, and like, you know, he had a key and went in and searched the house and said he didn't find anyone. And they also said that the lights, like all the lights went off at one point and they had to go back in there and turn them on. And they said that they didn't lose power or anything, like there was no storm or anything. So that was really weird. You know, that's one of those things where it's like we weren't there. So, but the stepdad, you know, who was an adult, was like, yeah, you know, he didn't really want to talk about it. He was like, yeah, I went over there. There was nothing there. We were like, okay. That's all for that house.
So what else went on in this neighborhood? Anything else?
Yes, but I don't want to go out of order.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So the next thing we had on our list was to talk about the other street.
Yes.
We were both there for that, so
yeah,
we can both talk about it.
So we have another mutual friend in this little gang of gals who lived on a different street at the other end of the neighborhood. And one time we were all over there to hang out, and she showed us a spirit board that she had gotten. And I don't remember all the details of where she got it from, but it was not a Ouija board. It wasn't something made by Mattel or whatever. It was a spirit board that had been blessed by somebody. It had like a round, like glass or crystal thing that you moved around with your hands. And there was like an instruction booklet with like how to start seances and like how to do the rituals safely. And the number one rule was to like never break contact with the little crystals glass circle thing that you moved around. Don't ever let go until you've like said the thing you're supposed to say to like seal it up and like make it safe to stop doing it. We messed around with that thing a few times. I don't remember, Hazel, if I got to play with that. Like, did we all play with that together for the first time, or did you play it with her like before me? Like, I don't remember.
So I don't know, because the reason that some of this is hard is because sometimes I lived in Kentucky at this point, so I would only be here on the weekend. And so some of the time, if I would see that friend, it would just be the two of us. And some of the time it would be the full group. So I'm not sure when the first time, I don't know if I did it before the group or not. Okay. I know that we did it outside generally when it was just the two of us.
Yeah. So we started this spirit board experience, and we were, you know, asking a lot of questions, and, you know, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about it because I just don't think you know what you're talking to when you're doing these kinds of things. So who knows? Exactly. Who knows what we were talking to, or if the answers we got were even real. But a very interesting thing that happened was one of the dead people we thought we were talking to said her name was Elizabeth, and we asked her when she died, and I don't remember the exact year because that was so long ago, but it was 1800 something. And we asked her how she died, and she said that she jumped off a bridge. I don't remember why the conversation went this way, but then she spelled out that she wanted to hurt me specifically.
Oh, geez.
Like, she spelled out my name. And then she said that she was in the closet. And
that is so creepy.
It is creepy. And at that point, we all flew away from the board screaming. So we let go of the little glass crystal thing before doing our like closing ritual.
Yeah.
And that freaked me out that we all like didn't do that. We broke the seal, and this dead woman was in the closet and wanted to hurt me, and that scared me, and we were all screaming, and her mom came and took away the board.
She also scolded us.
Yeah.
So we were talking about that in preparation for this, and I am close enough that I could go walk over there and see the names on all the gravestones, but then I remembered Find a Grave. So I could do it from the comfort of my own office. So I was looking at all of them, and I found an Eliza. That's close and that's creepy enough, but the thing, it matched the year too. It was 1886 when she died. But the weird part is that, so that street is called Bridges because it was like the first family that kind of settled in our area. They were the Bridges family. And so her name was Eliza Bridges. And
Yeah,
she
so there was a cemetery.
said she jumped off a bridge. Oh yeah, across the street.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't say that. There was a cemetery across the street from our friend's house.
Okay.
And like, I know growing up, that same friend would always tell me the weird stuff that would go on in their house with lights and like the dogs getting spooked and causing, you know, things to fall over and all kinds of stuff like that. And she was pretty sure it had to do with the cemetery across the street. So that's weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
Yeah.
And this was just last night when she searched the grave website and found that her name was Eliza Bridges. And I was like, well, she said she jumped off a bridge, but maybe, you know, something was lost in translation there. I mean, Elizabeth, in the conversation with the spirit board, Eliza and Bridge was spelled out.
Yeah, that seems like a big coincidence.
Yeah.
And 1800 something. I thought she was born in like the 1700s on the grave. So that cemetery is from like the late 1800s in that neighborhood. And that neighborhood was probably developed around the 60s, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of history right in this little area.
That was super fascinating.
It's quite possible we can find out how she died.
She was
That's what I
88.
was wondering. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
could have been just old.
Yeah, hard to imagine an 88-year-old jumping off a bridge. But...
Well, her name was Bridge, so that's like, she's being tricksy.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Well, if you have a way, Tim, to research, or if Allison does, and you guys want to find out more about Eliza Bridges, I would love to know.
I was just going to turn it over to Allison, honestly. She's the queen of that.
Yeah. Yes, I think I was done with seances and all that after that. That was pretty scary.
Yeah, I mean that's not a pleasant ending, but I've had, you know, teenagers, they start messing with those things, and I'm not of the, you know, I have people who tell me, oh, I won't even have a Ouija board in my house. It's not the board. There's nothing, the board is just a board. The problem is, like you were saying, you don't know what you're contacting when you contact things.
Exactly.
And that is the worry with those things. And I've had some really rough stories of teenagers messing with those and things just not going well. So not that yours was a particularly happy story, but, you know, probably a good thing you didn't continue with it.
Oh, yeah. Never look back.
Yeah.
Actually, I do think that my friend got the board back from her mom at some point, and I think that we did the closing ritual at some point later in time, just to like say we did it.
Yeah, try to button it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really the last paranormal thing I experienced was not in that neighborhood at all. But I used to like to go into abandoned houses for
Me too.
For a photography class. I thought it was cool to take pictures of abandoned houses for school.
Mm-hmm.
We had a gang of friends who were pretty curious, and I don't know how these guys found this. Maybe it was through rumors. I never asked how they found this house. But there was a little gaggle of boys that we ran around with at the time, and they found this abandoned house. I know exactly where it is on the map. Like, I've looked at the Google satellite images and found it. Because like when you're a teen and you're riding around your friend's car, you're not driving, you don't really know where you're going, you're not even out of the nest yet, you don't know all the names of the roads, and you don't really know the larger community outside of your neighborhood. At least I didn't, like I had no idea where we were. We were just driving around at night in the summer, being wild, listening to loud music and stuff. But these guys knew where this house was. And we parked at a bar that was by a railroad track. The railroad track was suspended above the road. And we walked up the hill to the railroad track and walked down the track. And this was like in the middle of the night. We walked for a while down this railroad track until there was a road off to the side that led up to a house. And this was like a tree covered, I'm just going to call it a driveway. I guess it was the driveway. So we're walking through like this tunnel of trees to get up to this house. It was pretty long, and the boys had like ran up ahead of us, and they were like throwing rocks, trying to scare us and stuff. And we couldn't see them, didn't know what we were doing, didn't know where we were going. And then we get up to the top of the driveway, the trees clear, and then you just see this huge house up against the night sky. And it had 3 chimneys. I remember that. It was like a big white farmhouse. And I guess this was an abandoned house that people used for various things. And I was just like, this is the mother lode, like this is awesome. And it was very weird though. It looked like the family just up and left. Like everything was still in there. There was like a baby grand piano in this large sitting room off to the right when you first stepped in. And the kitchen still had the kids' ceramics projects from school on the counter, and all their mail was just piled up in the floor in front of the mail slot. And, there was books on the shelf, like there was just still stuff there. And it just looked like they up and left. That's another thing that I remember one of your interviewees talking about when they were describing, it must have been an abandoned house they explored, how it just looked like the family up and left. And I actually made note of that.
That might have been me, because we found one.
Okay.
The bowl of cereal was still on the table.
Okay.
I mean, it was, and the newspaper was still open to, I assume, whatever day these people left.
Yeah.
I think it was the 1970s or 60s. I forget now.
Okay.
And it was just, everything was just dusty and dirty and stuff, but it just looked like they just walked out the door. It was bizarre.
Yeah. So it was very bizarre. Okay, so yeah, it must have been you. It sounds like that cereal bowl, details ringing a bell. So yeah, so we were all just, spreading out throughout the house, exploring. There's some weird stuff in there, like clearly some really not okay things were happening in that house. I went down to the basement. I'm just laughing now because I would never do something like this now. But
yeah, no, I was crazy. I worry about falling through the floor and stuff. When I was a kid, just walk right in.
Oh my gosh, craziness, no fear. So I go down to the basement by myself, and this was like a dirt floor cellar with like, mason jars on the wall that had like rotten, canned, jarred things. And kind of like in the back room, there was kind of like a wall down there that separated the space from where you first came down the steps, like this back room. I walked into the back room, and there was like a folding table piled high with Reader's Digests from like 30 years. And I was like, look at this treasure trove of Reader's Digest. This is so cool. Look at all these 60s illustrations and stuff. But I was there to investigate, I think. And I had my flashlight up by my face and I asked, you know, is anyone there? Like, do you want to talk to me? Or, you know, is there anyone here? You know? And I kind of saw like this mist. It kind of looked like what your breath looks like when it's cold, but it wasn't cold. It was like the summer, and my mouth was closed, you know, like I was waiting, listening for a reply. And after I saw that mist, everybody else in the house started screaming and running out of the house. And that scared me. So I ran out the basement stairs, joined them outside, and I was like, what's going on? What's going on? They were like, all our flashlights just turned off. Like, all at the same time. And then we left. Like, that was scary. But I tried going back to that house again with a different group of people, but that didn't work out. And I ended up finding out that that house was torn down, so it's not even there anymore. Because I wanted to find it on Google Maps, so I looked and I found the railroad track in the bar, but the house is gone. So that was that experience.
I can't imagine, like, you're in the basement alone, which, first of all, brave, and then just everybody runs out while you're in the basement.
Yeah.
I would have noped out of there so quick.
Oh, I did. I flew up those stairs. I was terrified because they were all screaming too, and I didn't know what happened. So
wow.
My flashlight was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was weird. Yeah, but they were scared. Like, and these are, you know, boys that kind of, you know, were a little naughty and got up to no good, and they were freaked out. They were freaked out.
I wonder at my bravery. I went into an old tuberculosis hospital.
Oh no!
Abandoned, and I'm messing around in there. And it was for the same thing, high school photography. I'm just taking pictures, and there was a raccoon, either dead or asleep, in the middle of the floor.
Oh, you and a raccoon.
And
again.
I all but poked it with a stick. I got up as close as I could to take pictures of it and stuff. Now I'm thinking, what were you doing? like, what was I even doing? Like, an old tuberculosis, that seems like a good place to break into.
Well, if we have time, I'll just tell a quick another abandoned house story that has nothing to do with ghosts, but it's for paranormal stuff. But if we have time, I'll tell it really quickly. My dad lived in Indianapolis after my parents got divorced. So there was a lot of driving back and forth between Cincinnati and Indianapolis. And on one of those trips, I was alone with my dad. My sister couldn't come for some reason. And my dad really liked to take long detours through the country, I think just to prolong our time together. And he knew that I liked to go into abandoned houses and take pictures. And so he kind of started doing some photography himself, stopping and taking pictures of like dilapidated barns and things like that in the country. And while we were driving, we drove past this house on State Route 9 in Indiana. My dad was like, look at that cool house. Like, let's go check that out. And I was like, okay. So we pull up into the driveway, and this property is just littered with garbage. I mean, tires, refrigerators, lots and lots of bleach bottles everywhere. I'm talking hundreds of bleach bottles specifically all over, like the backyard, the side yards, all around the house. We walk around the left side of the house, like we're walking down the left side of the house, and there's the back kitchen door on the left side. There's no door, but it's like the doorway entry to like the back kitchen area. and the floor had caved in. Like there was a big hole in the middle of the floor. And there was I'm just going to do like a little disclaimer here for any sensitive listeners that what I'm about to say next is a little bit disturbing. And if you want to skip forward like 15 seconds, I would do that now. It has to do with animals. So there was a decapitated dog carcass laid across the threshold of the back door.
Oof.
And we still stepped over it to go inside. And we walked around the perimeter of this hole and went into the next room. And there was like a skillet on a stovetop thing on the floor. And I was like, we got to go. I was like, people are cooking meth here or something. So we got to get out of here. And so we left. And when we came back around the side of the house where we could see the driveway, there was a pickup truck parked next to my dad's car.
Oh, geez.
With two very large men in the front seats and a little tiny boy in between them. And they were pissed. And my dad hands me the car keys behind his back. And he was like, you're going to get in the driver's seat and you're going to go. And I was like, okay. And my dad was put on this happy face, like, hi guys, like, what's up? You know, like, just trying to be like jolly and polite. I don't remember if they got out of the truck or not. I don't think they did. I think they just kind of had their window down. And they were like, our friend who lives in Florida owns this property and he doesn't appreciate trespassers. We keep an eye out for him. And like, what are you doing? My dad was like, oh, you know, we just like exploring abandoned houses and just doing some like photography. And I was like, why did you tell them we took pictures?
Wow.
You know, they let us go. You know, we were able to get back in our car and leave. But as we're driving away, I was like, Dad, they could have had a shotgun or a gun on their lap and we couldn't have seen it. And my dad was like so freaked out. He felt terrible. He was like, oh my God, like I can't believe I put you in danger like that. And we just kind of had a freak out moment. But yeah, that was the last time I did an abandoned house thing.
Yeah, that could have gone any number of ways.
Yeah.
But
yes.
Thankfully, it did not.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
The decapitated dog is just so weird. That's like such a weird, yucky addition.
I think it was a warning, you know? It was laid across the threshold, like, don't come in here. Mm-hmm. It's really weird.
Yeah. We were shopping for houses before we bought the one we currently live in, and we were looking at one, and it was in pretty rough shape, but not so rough where it couldn't be fixed up. But there was, I looked in the window, and there was Sudafed boxes, containers, wrappers of Sudafed just all over the floors of this house, just everywhere. And I'm like, nope, we cannot live here because they were making meth here, and who knows who's going to knock on your door at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, nope, we'll choose another house.
Well, it's not safe to live in there with all of the toxins that have absorbed into the drywall and things like that if they were cooking.
Yeah, especially with kids.
Yeah.
Anyway, and that's Abandoned House Chat.
Yes.
My new podcast, Abandoned House Chat.
I've never had a bad experience with abandoned houses. I always had great experiences. Yeah.
Really?
I have, like, right behind me, you can't see it because the door's shut, but I have a big hex sign I took from a apple farm. I just have, like, the fondest memories. I didn't expect that turn.
My older brother, my brother Chris, who's deceased, he was the king of abandoned houses. He would take me to abandoned houses all the time. I don't know how he found them all. He would just find them everywhere. And he'd just be like, come on, let's go see this abandoned house. We'd just be driving, and he'd be like, come on, check this place out. He always knew where they were.
It's sort of like knowing how people are when they're not being they're not being watched. It's like just for themselves, like seeing that kind of stuff. It's like a little slice of life.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Last one I went into was actually at Site 7, and it was another one that looked like it was just a little like Cape Cod, little house, and it looked like they just picked up and moved. There was kids toys laying around and magazines in the house and stuff.
There's an abandoned house at Site 7.
Right outside of it, yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Woo! That place just gets creepier and creepier.
Yeah, something about it. All right, so getting back to Hazel.
Okay, well, during the teenage times, well, in like preteen times, I lived far away. I lived in Kentucky. So, like I mentioned before, I only saw them on the weekends. But I had kind of some crazy stuff happen in Kentucky too, because Kentucky's a weird place.
Yeah, I hear.
So, well, I was still hanging out with them. I was doing a bunch of stuff on my own. I was starting to kind of get into things I probably shouldn't be getting into. Definitely wasn't allowed to. Would get myself into trouble. I was really into automatic writing and like both like artistically and, you know, what people think is like scripting for ghosts and things. But I would be trying to do that all the time. But there was one night I had a basement room where we lived in Kentucky, and I was like laying in bed and I was unable to sleep. And I kept hearing a really weird sound, and it was like voo, 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 over and over again, and then it would stop. And then it would start again. It was really starting to freak me out. So finally I got up and I turned on the light. I had like this remote control Jeep that I would drive around down there because there was a big like my room was attached to the room with the washer and dryer, and it was concrete floor in there. So I would drive it around and like ramp it and do all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the point is the Jeep was making noises and the wheels were turning even though it was on its side. So I was like, that's really weird. So I took the battery pack out of the bottom and I turned it off, made sure like whatever, I got back in bed. And of course, it started going again after I had taken the battery pack out. And so I like waited because I thought like, I don't know, is there like reserve, like, is there any kind of reserve inside of it? It just kept going, but it would be like in increments, like it would be silent and then let me feel safe long enough and then start again, like, So finally, like I turned on the light and I ran upstairs and I went outside in the back and I threw it in the garbage can. Because I wasn't going to have any of that. My mom like heard me doing this and came downstairs and she was just like, what is going on? It was a lot of little stuff like that. And actually that was one of the things like when Michelle was talking about poltergeist activity, I kind of thought like maybe that could be my own energy because it was like, you know, coming into my self around those times, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's the prime time for it.
So, you know, it could have been that, but either way, it's weird. And when you're experiencing it, you don't like it.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so then fast forward, my mom gets married again, and this person adopts me, and we move back into the neighborhood that my grandparents live in. So we're back in the place. And there's one night where there were a lot of like heavy things going on. And one of the things was that one of the people in my family died. He fell off his boat and he died. And that was like something that we were all kind of sitting with. There were some kind of other heavy things that are personal for people, so I won't say them, but I was coming home really late, like really close to my curfew. And I'm walking up to my house, and across the street, I live in a cul-de-sac. And I thought I saw my neighbor's dog outside, and he was a black dog. So I called him. And then this dog starts to come to me, but it doesn't have legs. And it's all black, blacker than black, just like the witch. And it's like coming at me faster than I expected this other dog, Jake, to come at me. It wasn't Jake because there were no legs and no eyes. And so I like ran up my hill to the house and I turned around and there was nothing there. And I'm just like, didn't know what to do with that at all.
Scary.
And I remember at the
Yeah.
time I tried to tell my boyfriend, and he was like asking me questions about it, and it just made me feel crazy. So I was just like, never mind, just never mind. I guess it didn't happen.
Oof.
So then, fast forward a few more years, same house, more stressful situations happening. I'm sleeping. And I should have mentioned this earlier. I've always been a very active sleeper. Like, all the women in my family kind of talk in their sleep. I used to have reoccurring dreams all the time. And I know weird stuff happens in sleep. I have really bizarre dreams. I'll remember them for a really long time and everything like that. So anyway, I'm having this dream. I'm waking up, and you know how sometimes when you're waking up, you have that thing, I think people call it like Alice in Wonderland syndrome or something like that, where you feel like big and then you feel small and then you feel big, and it's just kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like that, and I'm like not all the way awake, but I know like mentally I am. And then I see this shadow person in my door. And then I feel something on my bed, starting at my feet, pushing down on my body, coming up all the way to my chest, and just like full weight of a man on my chest. And I couldn't breathe, and it just like was close to me, and I'm trying to scream for my mom and I can't get anything to come out because I'm having sleep paralysis and I can't wake up my body. And finally I think I was like, ah! And she like came in because their room was next to mine, and they finally heard me, but I was just so freaked out, and I was trying to explain to her what happened, and I was like, say the Lord's Prayer, because I didn't know what sleep paralysis was at the time.
It's terrifying it's terrifying anyway, but when you don't know what it is, it's so frightening.
Yeah. So, after a while, I would be kind of afraid to fall asleep because I didn't want to have it again.
Did it happen more than once?
Yeah, it didn't happen where I saw a person, though. Like, I would have the feeling of someone being on me and, like, not being able to breathe, but I wouldn't see anything after that point. And I kind of learned how to sort of jumpstart myself so that I wouldn't. I'm a really touchy sleeper now. Like, everything wakes me up. And I think it's because of that experience, because I don't want to be so deep that I can't bring myself out of it.
Yeah.
Michelle, have you ever experienced sleep paralysis?
I have not. I've had recurring dreams, and I've had a few extremely vivid dreams that I have remembered my whole life, but no sleep paralysis, thank God. I've had a couple of like night terrors where I woke up, like I was screaming in my dream, and I woke up screaming, and it was crying. But I've never been paralyzed, no.
How close do you both live to the old stomping grounds, the old neighborhood?
I'm currently in the same neighborhood.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to add one more thing to that sort of thing. The person who was the parent of our friend who lived next door, when we were like 10 or something, she was telling me that she had sleep paralysis, but she wasn't saying sleep paralysis. And she had an experience in the house right next door to Michelle's house of sleep paralysis. And she had it more than once. I know she would talk about it. And I just didn't know what it was until recently. And then I put it together like, oh, she was having sleep paralysis.
Yeah.
A couple of other things happened in their house too that I know about. One time we came home from school, and there was a dead black bird inside their living room. All the windows were closed. All the doors were closed. Their chimney had like glass doors on it that were closed, like their fireplace. And I remember they were all freaking out because they were like, that's a bad sign, like a bad omen or something. And we were all just like freaked out about this dead black bird that was in the middle of the floor. And the other thing that was weird that happened was somebody took a picture, and this was back with like disposable cameras, that you had to go get developed and stuff. I don't know why they were taking pictures, like who knows, but they had taken some pictures, and when they got the pictures back from the developer, there was a photo of the living room, with people in it, just like it was just a candid moment of whatever was going on. But the television in the photo, the screen was showing their grandpa who had died like recently.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, he died like suddenly. He was in a like a one of those like ATVs. He had like an ATV,
he had a four-wheeler
accident, a four-wheeler, and broke his neck.
Yikes.
Yeah, so he died like really recently, and it was like after he died that he appeared on the television in their picture. Do you remember that, Hazel? Do you remember seeing that picture?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot about it until now. So while we've been talking about like preparing, because we've been talking for a while about if we want to come on the show and talk about our stuff, and as we've had conversations over the years, we are just like, what is going on with this neighborhood? Like, what happened here? Like, what was this land before this neighborhood was developed? What happened on this street? Because all of our families were experiencing things. It's just this, you'll never have answers. You'll never have answers.
Yeah, I mean, the best you could hope for, I don't know if you even want to hope for it, but the best you're likely to find is other records of other people experiencing weird stuff there. And you go, okay, this happened to more than just us.
Yeah.
But the whys, you'll probably never know.
Right.
You said there's a creek. In my experience, there's often a creek. That's like one of the things I ask, The other thing I would ask, like if you called me like, hey, do a paranormal investigation in this area. Is there any place where people are digging into the ground nearby? Mines, quarries, anything like that?
There's the jumps.
I wasn't sure if that would count.
It probably doesn't count. Like BMX bike jumps.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Michelle and Hazel, thank you so much for sharing your stories. If anything else happens, please contact me.
I hope it doesn't, but you'll be the first I'll let know.
All right.
Pleasure talking to you, Tim. Thanks so much for this space to share our personal experiences. We love the show. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. September 12th, 1938. Stamped on the back of this photo, Allison.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to ask you when it's from.
It's from September 12th, 1938.
It is an appropriately spooky photo of a tombstone.
It is. Can you check the name on that for me real quick? See what you think it says.
This seems like something I would ask you. Where am I looking even for the name?
Up at the top. What does that say to you?
Well, I don't know. What do you think it says?
Hyman back. Is that the name on the?
I can't even see. Point to where you see the name.
Here.
Okay, let me look. I can't.
You can't suppose.
I can't make anything. Oh, okay, now I'm starting to see it. It's like a magic eye thing. Yeah, that's Hyman back.
I feel like the price just went up.
Now, do you think that's why they photographed this back in 1938? They were like, "Ha ha, Hyman back."
No, I think it was probably a relative, but
no, I think they were. It was all for the lulz. It's okay. So it is a spooky photograph.
It is. It's very moody, sort of,
Yeah.
gothy. Like that is why I bought it initially. But now that I was like, oh, what's the person's name?
Hyman back.
Hyman back.
Well,
I've heard of Hollerback girls, but
all right. This will be our curiosity of the week, and it just became curiouser.
It does, and I think I'm going to have to look on Find a Grave since we haven't see the backstory here.
Yes.
The backstory of Hyman back.
So the listeners just heard this. You haven't because you didn't hear the interview. There was a Find a Grave discussion in the interview with a woman's name that they wanted me to ask you to look up and see if you could find the way she died, and I forgot to do that.
Oh, well, here we go.
So we will look that up, and if we find anything interesting, we'll report back, okay?
Yeah, because this person, I mean, with that name and this death date, I'm thinking there's
Yeah, you'll be able to find that
there
person.
shouldn't be too many people.
The other one we have a location for and everything. So.
Oh, okay. That should make it even easier.
All right. If you go to the show notes for this episode, you will see an image of this creepy gravestone with the interesting name on it. If you click that, it'll take you to our Etsy shop where you can purchase that and other curiosities of the week. Also at Etsy, the Flowered Path t-shirts are in. They have been selling extremely well. I'm very, very happy with the way those have been selling. The sales of the t-shirts seem to be disproportionate to the downloads we get on that podcast, which I'm happy about. I'm not complaining.
You can
But-
like things just for the art too, I think.
Yeah, maybe people were just digging the logo.
The design's pretty cool.
Yeah, but those are in there. I think at this point, I think we still have all sizes small through 2X. There might be one 2X left right now, though. The 3X is sold out immediately. The other sizes, we only have a few of each. So if you want a Flowered Path t-shirt, go grab one now. But we have Strange Familiars t-shirts there. We have Strange Familiars patches and stickers. All of my books are there. We just got restocks of my books, so everything's in stock. If you order them from us on Etsy, I will sign them. You don't even have to ask. They'll arrive signed. I still have a few copies of Monsters Under the Hospital Bed, my little art zine I did when I was recovering from my MS attack. But we're getting down to the last copies of that, so people might want to pick that up. You can get artwork at Etsy, both originals and prints, and more. Our shop name is Lost Grave. But if you type in Strange Familiars, you should see our stuff come up. Chad's on Etsy. Ruck Rabbit Outdoors is his shop. And our friends at Karmic Garden are as well. Nicole from Karmic Garden sent me a screenshot of a review someone left. They bought the Strange Familiar soap. Mm-hmm. And it said something like, if Tim smells this good, no wonder his podcast is so good, or something like, I don't know. I forget the actual quote, but I found it quite humorous. And you go ahead and make a comment about how I smell now.
I had prepared something, and I've decided to just lock it down.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Supporting us on Etsy is another way to support the show besides Patreon. So thank you to everyone who purchases items from us on Etsy. It all helps keep this machine running. All right, Allison, anything you'd like to add?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Happy Easter to those who celebrate it. Happy spring to everyone. And we'll be back soon with more Strange Familiars. Strange Familiars is a production of Dark Color Arts. Intro and background music is by Stone Breath. If you want to hear more or purchase music by Stone Breath, you can go to stonebreath.bandcamp.com. I believe it's Bandcamp Friday this week. So if you purchase something, Bandcamp gives all the money to the artist. It's a great time to support any artist you like on Bandcamp. Great, great service for musicians, Bandcamp. I love Bandcamp. Strange Familiars is on Facebook, facebook.com/Strange Familiars. You can join the Strange Familiars gathering group there. We are on Instagram at Strange Familiars, one word, and you can find us on the web 24/7 at www.
Oh, I'm sorry. Strangefamiliars.com.
Yes, you got it. Strangefamiliars.com.
As I ramble among the leaves so fine, I overheard a young woman converse with Reynardine. Her hair was black, her eyes were blue, her lips were red as wine. We smiled to gaze upon her, like old Reynardine. She said, good sir, be civil, my company forsake. For by my own opinion, I fear you are a ray. from the judge's men. Cherry cheeks and ruby lips, they lost their former dye, and she fell into his arms along the mountainside. I kissed her once or twice, and she came to again. Modestly she asked him, "Good sir, what is your name?" If by chance you look for me, by chance you'll not me find, I'll be in my green castle, inquire for rain or tide. Day and night she followed him, his eyes did brightly shine, and led her over the mountains, the sly bold rain